Hi, Chris here, Keystone Lawn and Tree Care in Spokane, Washington. Beginner's guide on how to plan and start up your own lawn mowing business, but not just how to start and own and operate your own lawn care business, but also some financial tips and things that you might not have thought of. So in today's video, we're going to talk about Denis Diderot. Who is this guy? A French philosopher from the 1700s, and what does he have anything to do with lawn mowing? Well, stay tuned and you'll find out. Denis Diderot. Who is this guy? Well, he's a French philosopher from the 1700s who came up with the idea of the Diderot effect. What is that? Well, let me just read it for you here from Wikipedia. The Diderot effect is a social phenomenon related to consumer goods. It is based on two ideas. The first idea is that goods purchased by consumers will align with their sense of identity and as a result will complement one another. This is where it gets good. The second idea states that the introduction of a new possession that deviates from the consumer's current complementary goods can result in a process of spiraling consumption. Spiraling consumption, because you buy one cool thing, makes you want to go out and buy other cool stuff to complement all the cool stuff you're buying. Well, when you're starting a lawn mowing business, that you got cool stuff. You got a lot of cool machinery you get to buy. Well, the Diderot effect is simply stating just because you buy a cool lawnmower doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a big, nice, cool new truck. Doesn't mean you have to buy the newest, latest weed eater to go with it, or a backpack blower, or whatever. So we're going to talk about trying to stay within your means when you're first getting started. As much fun as it sounds like going out there and buying a brand new truck and getting some signs for your truck and buying some cool new stuff, you know, when you're first getting started, you just can't afford to do that. So we need to prioritize our money, what's important, what's going to make us more money, and what may not be so important, and stuff that maybe we could just rent. So for example, maybe when you're first getting started, you don't have enough money to say buy a hard edger or a stick edger, or to give your hard edges. Well, what you could do is you could rent a piece of machinery like that for like $50 for the day, probably at any rental shop. And then you can, once a month, you can hit all your clients and just give them a hard edge, because you don't need to hard edge every single week. So there's an idea. Just because you got a nice new mower doesn't mean you got to run out and get a new stick edger. So there's an idea, kind of countering that Diderot effect. Just because you buy one cool thing doesn't mean you got to run out and buy a bunch of more cool stuff. An example for me in regards to the Diderot effect is that I had a snow blower, and I think, okay, great, I can do snow blowing, I can do sidewalks, and I can do driveways. But the next thing I was thinking, I want to go run out and buy a big, nice new snow plow for my truck. Well, I couldn't really afford it, even after saving up. And I didn't really have very many snow accounts to begin with. So what I did is I subcontract out those parking lots that I had for commercial properties. So for example, I would run around and do all the snow blowing and de-icing on the stairs in the front of the businesses, and then I would subcontract out the snowplow work of the parking lots, and I would keep that business as my own. So at the end of the month, the snowplow guy would bill me, I would mark it up 10%, and then I would tack on my de-icing service and my snow blowing service on top of that, and remaining the main point of billing. Again, sub it out, keep the contract, bill out on top. So after a few years, I was able to afford, after saving, and going through and managing my money well over the years, I was able to save up the $7,000-8,000 to buy a snowplow. And then I have these contracts. Now I got 4 or 5 or 6 parking lots, and I could kind of take them back from the snowplow guy, and now I could do both. I could do both the snow blowing of the sidewalks, de-icing the stairs and whatnot, and the parking lots. So just because I had a snow blower didn't mean I had to run out and get a snow plow. And for a real life example, though, what just happened to me recently, as I upgraded my phone recently, and when I upgraded my phone, I had to get the new case, I had to get a new glass screen protector, I felt like I wanted to get a new charging dock, I felt like I wanted to get the new wireless charging for where you just set it down on the pad, but I found that my wireless headphones, they weren't, the little case wasn't wireless compatible. So then I'm like, now I have to spend $80 and I want to upgrade to the wireless feature. Well, you know what? I kind of pulled it back a little bit. I was like, no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to upgrade to the old wireless 3-in-1 Belkin thing where it's going to charge me an extra 150 bucks. You know, I'm going to keep my regular old earbud case. You know, I'm just not going to spend the 80 bucks and go all wireless charging and stuff. And it just didn't really make sense for me. And you know, maybe it does for you. Yeah, you know, you do got to buy a new case, and you do got to buy a new screen protector for your phone, especially when you spend like $1,000 on a phone, or you get it on your cell phone plan. You got to pay 20 bucks a month indefinitely for your phone. But you know, that's just an idea of the Diderot effect. You know, just because you got the new phone doesn't mean you got to get all the extra peripherals that go along with it. At least not right away. Or if you do, you better budget that into the initial investment, or the idea in the back of your head of how much is this phone really going to cost me. You know, another example, my kids, they got an Xbox for Christmas, and they wanted to get the wireless charging for the controller instead of having to replace the batteries all the time. Well, that was like an extra cost. I don't know, it was like 40 or 50 bucks for the little wireless station they could set the controller on to wirelessly charge. Well, you know, that was probably should have thought a little bit about that in initially investing into the Xbox, you know, whatever it was, the Xbox One or S, I don't know what they're called, but whatever, you know. So that's just an example. The kids found out like, oh crap, now my initial investment of the Xbox, now I had to buy the wireless charging station, and they're like, oh crap, I didn't realize that the games are going to cost also like 60 bucks a piece, you know, or oh man, I have to buy a second controller for my brother. And so their initial investment in the Xbox, you know, just like kept going up and up and up and up and up, and then it kind of got away from them. So that's just an example of the Diderot effect, how to just to be aware of it and what's happening, and not necessarily to fall victim to all of this, and take it all kind of maybe slowly in steps to build up to having all the great stuff. And sometimes you don't really need all the great stuff. All right, let's bring it back around. I'm getting a little away here. We got the Diderot effect, and how does that translate into our lawn mowing business? Well, just because you had enough money and you saved up and you bought your nice new lawnmower doesn't necessarily have to go run out and buy your next biggest, newest weed eater, for example. Or you just because you have a hand blower doesn't mean you have to upgrade and get your backpack blower, at least not initially. So for me, in a real life example, was I saved up and I bought a nice 36-inch Skag walk behind mower, and it's just got awesome. I bought the extra peripherals for it because I budgeted that into my overall cost. I bought the little wheels that go onto the back, and I bought like the $300 grass catching bag that goes on the side. So I outfitted it. It's pretty nice, but you know, those things mechanically they break down, and after a year or so I had to take it into the shop, and I was without that mower for a couple of weeks while it was in for service. Well, did I just immediately run out and buy another $5,000 mower to replace the one that no, I had an old dinosaur kicking around in the boneyard. I had a 36-inch MTD dual hydro, and it ran. It didn't do a very good job, and it wasn't like perfect, but it did get me by while the nicer machine was in the shop. So having a backup is a good idea. And same with like your weed eater. If you did have a nice weed eater, you don't necessarily, and it breaks down, you don't have to go run out and buy a brand new one just to replace it. Maybe you can replace the one you got with maybe a temporary fix like an old Echo or something. And we have that. I have a couple old Echoes kicking around, weed eaters, that they work pretty good for maintenance, just light duty stuff that I substitute in for when the good big steel stuff goes down. So again, it kind of is similar to the Diderot effect, where just because you have one nice thing doesn't mean you have to get the adjacent and better thing or best thing to kind of match it. So these are just some ideas to kind of kick around in the back of your head, kind of prepare for the worst, if you will. But when you do, you don't have to like get the next best thing. You can maybe get by with having some good backup equipment in the meantime. Oh man, I almost forgot. Don't forget to hit the old like button and hit the subscribe button below. All right, you guys, thank you. Until next week, we'll see you later.